Can you all see what I was concerned with the baby at first? Again, the baby was more here, this arm was long, and so he was kind of just shooting through with this foot. Was it obvious? Because I was almost like, you know, and then all of a sudden he looked over to Diane. Now, could you also see what I get out of a child with Diane than just on my own?
Yeah.
The little conversations we have and how she...
That was my question. Without her, you should be quite limited in your session.
No, I just would take it a different way. She always says, I'll do what you need me to do, but honestly, since it's such a different pleasure and a different aspect that I can get away with her, that I'll take her cues. She doesn't know it, but I'll just follow her.
Yeah.
I mean, she'll ask me, and there's times where if she's working on midline, let's say here, and tracking with a child, I'm not necessarily going to spin the child and say, oh, let's do the other side now. Mm-hmm. I'll just wait till she'll come back or give it that's enough black and white time or something, and then that's where my intro is, where I can move the child around for more specific, work that I want to do. What?
Oh, sorry. Finished? Going back to your first question, can you assume it wasn't obvious that...
on the length of the arm and everything.
I was a bit concerned there was just a tad of torticollis.
That's what I was thinking.
I was just the way, and I'm actually almost a bit concerned, but if I hadn't seen the brother I was a little bit concerned of a very low frequency of Down syndrome. I don't know if anybody noticed how wide the nasal septum was with the eyes, but it was the 3-year-old that had it too, the wider bridge, so I just assumed it was more genetic based. But if you look back at the pictures of the baby, he really had more of the wider, and so the mouth was more like this. So in some very light cases of Down syndrome, it's not as apparent to pick up. However, he was so observant with the eyes and what he was doing, I seriously doubt, because with the part of the genetic base with Down syndrome is you do have a lower IQ in the system. But again, is it because of movement? This is where I need to do more studies. When I was working with a child, Leah, but I really haven't gotten to a child, the baby with Down syndrome. Because the problem with Down syndrome, or a lot of genetic-based syndrome, is they're told what their child will accomplish, and they really are not aggressive with early therapy because a lot of parents think it is what it is. I know the diagnosis even hurt me tremendously because anything that my son was doing, especially with his sickness, oh, that's autism. Oh, he's not giving me eye contact, it's autism. Well, maybe because he hurts like hell, he's vegetative. Christ, what does that have to, looking back. There are some certain times where I really should have rushed my child to the hospital, but, it is what it is. But, but like I said, if you saw the pictures again, I don't know if it's easy to pull back on the camera or we just have to wait till tomorrow. There was just, if you look at right here, he was just a tad wider through the bridge. But the 3-year-old who kept coming up with, I was doing Donald Duck with, he also had a much wider eye space. So human basic proportions, just which I know more from art, the eye. I don't know if people are familiar with it. So human proportionate should be eye. So the length of the eye should go into, so my eyeball here. So if you actually look at me, even though I have a very small mouth, a big mouth talk-wise, my proportions are very off because my mouth is actually quite narrow into, and I have much narrower. When you're an art major, man, they rip you to shreds. And also, adults, if more so for Caucasians, our faces are actually 90 degrees. Most people don't realize that, learn that in carving. So if you do a 90-degree angle, that should be your face. Hand to the back of ear from the nose. And so with the baby, obviously, you're going to get a wider face that way. But you still want to look to see eye, across as far as typical proportions. So if you're Eskimo based or Native American stuff, you're going to get a wider angle, or bridge. Asian, but for Caucasian, you're going to get the 90 degree.
90 degrees from the nose?
So see a 90 degree angle? If I take a 90 degree angle and a piece of wood like this and just went like that, see, I fit into my face.
Oh, from like
Most people think that the face is much flatter than it is, but it actually can do a 90 degree, see?
okay, from like cheekbone to the bridge of the nose.
Right. But also proportion-wise, hand to back of ear usually, or mid-ear, or ear hole, sorry.
Ear hole?
Totally.
Mine's not long enough.
So, but basic proportions,
About that, Caroline.
see?
Next round.
So when you see babies too, where the ears, also the ears should fall in between the eyes and the mouth. See? See that? So for eyes, ears,
And you say the eye, distance of the eye.
no. So the top of the ears usually are from the eyes, and then also for the droop, see, goes mouth. As far as,
But before you're saying something eye, meaning.
it's the width of the eye, is usually normal proportions. So when you see someone that's a little wider set in the bridge,
Can't see your ears.
you know what I mean? That's where doctors start looking at genetic-based issues, is the eye width, and high palate are the first two things that they look for. And then, also too, if you see with babies, they'll show a little bit of swelling, sometimes right around the ears. That's where I get a little concerned. Like see how my ears stick out just nice? There's just whatever, because they're not getting the cranium shape that should be happening. So there's sometimes a little swelling here.
It's up in here, not just over.
No, it's around, there's like a beefy part around the ears that I get concerned with. And that's usually a sign that the head shape's starting to go. Because of the, the flat head. I catch that before I see, like later on, if they don't intervene with me or say something like that, then it's like, oh, my baby's getting a flat head. Well, yeah, I could see it starting to happen.
So it's just, I'm going to go back. It's like an earmuff over the top of it.
Yeah, but
Or
it's
is it
more like
higher?
right here.
Yeah, right. Okay.
That's not a good, you know what I mean? Those are little things that I'm like, I might throw in that I look at, but I'm still looking for movement. I'm not here to diagnose anybody. However, if the child did have Down
Indicators.
syndrome, they're indicators
are helpful.
where I would go with, so.
And was it just the mild torticollis or?
Well, you saw when I said with the knee, I'm not getting the knee to do any of this. Again, the babies are, the big breakthrough is what I love this technique. You're just here with that pelvis, and all you're doing is here, but you find a balance part. So if I go too far in, see how the back sways? So for each baby, it's a little different depending on the length of their torso. But you just come here, and there's like a little bouncing part, and that's what I was showing you today around 11-ish when I was saying, and they just find this point where they can just go boop, boop, but once he did that, first he just played with it, and then he quickly went to alternating knee. So that's where too, it's like, boy, he's already going into a pre-crawl. He just gets it. I mean, he was quick. Even when Diane would just do it, just this with the plate, he just, for 6 weeks old, like she had a ball with him. So, and then I just come in here and then I quickly can just this, but the baby, he went with it. But when there's scanning going on, I'm just here. I just counter. Just that easy. Unfortunately, I can't do vision with Madison and do pelvic. But where you saw me here to do all of that. Now, if I was here and he was pushing off, I wasn't looking again for him to physically push off. Because Diane was right, which I wouldn't have let him. She's still so funny. She thinks I'm going to just let these things shoot off the table. But what she was concerned, he was going to catch like this. But again, that only happens with really delayed babies or low-tone babies because there's no head lift in with the push. So again, when I push my foot in, right, I should feel that, right? But if it's like this, where I was sort of doing that, where my head was back, I pushed my foot in. So if I feel that, I'm not gonna let that child push off on me, because then they will end up catching that head. But if they're like this, then their head shouldn't catch. But again, it's 6 weeks old. I'm not looking for him to bolt.
Do you see this as head lag or countering the pelvis?
I don't see it as, yes, technically visually when you look at it as head lag, but that's not the source. When you say it's head lag, then someone's gonna say that neck needs to be strengthened. Right?
But from your perspective, it's countering the pelvis. or
Well,
it is-
no. What it's not countering is it's not feeling the two opposition of forces. That's what I was showing you this morning with the TheraBands kind of thing. So when you push into the system, your head shouldn't, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't know how to oppose gravity. But usually when there's head lag, that child also has issues with breathing.
I just noticed the Ariston or other kids when they get up, like he goes way back to get up from here.
Right. Well, that's what he's learning is, well, because he's doing it all with muscle, he doesn't know how to oppose it. But today he was getting that. So, but yes, his way is a CP way. But we don't. Why go there if you don't have to? Does that make sense?
So when you had your thumbs, so I wasn't sure when you were saying the pubic bone you were going for.
I'm gonna address her. Sorry if it seems sick because it's just rubber. So when I mean the pubic bone, and I can do this on Frank too, I'm just literally right here in the sense where it would be. So when I'm not going down and applying pressure into the pubic bone, but I'm literally going here, and there should be this fine tilt that takes that pelvis and just rolls it. So to seeing it this way, there just should be a fine tilt, see, that will roll that pelvis so the spine wants to hit the table. But if you do it and it doesn't, that's when the baby will arch and do all that. You'll get that CP response. So I don't want that. So when I'm doing that, I just want to go in, and again, just that goes over. And it was no difference when lifting the head. Do you know what I mean? So we're not holding the head like this and trying to do this. It's just that we're learning how to do that light and that rotation and all of the thing. But, sorry, I hope that didn't bother anybody, but I appreciate that.
So the fact that he is not lifting his head when he's on his tummy at this moment, that's it, 6 weeks.
Well, he was. He actually was. When I put him
He was?
down, yeah.
I didn't, okay.
Yeah,
I didn't see him lift.
correct. He wasn't lifting and rolling over, right? And when I had him to here,
Okay, he did lift.
no, when I had him to here, there was no lift. So that's what we were talking about. But when I had him up here and I was showing that,
Okay.
I came down around, and at this point, when I presented, then yes, he had head lift.
Okay, I missed it. All
Yeah,
right, good.
so he
Okay,
had
that's what I was-
head lift here, and I think you were talking with Amber. But what was really interesting was at one point, because I wanted to, she didn't catch it with the Skype, and Diane had the paper plate, and this is where I said, guys, you really need to be watching that. Diane happened to have the paper plate there. She wasn't, his eyes caught that plate, and in midair was just totally on it. And that's where Diane was like, holy crap, this kid is just, at 6 weeks, he should not be doing that. However, he was not doing it in any way, shape, or form. Spastic CP, planking, I mean, he was just like, oh, that's interesting. And I was able to put him down on the table, and he maintained, and then he got up, and then even rolling over, he was still looking to look at it. So for him to have that kind of eye gaze contact and moving around it, but that was really interesting too, what I was doing when he was bottle feeding. What I was doing here was just this, so he was sucking, so he was off this point. This is where I was talking about head rotation and moving the head around the front of the head. He was just fine sucking and doing all of that. And then I really got down into the neck. That was really something. Because normally if they're sucking, especially if they're worried and they're sucking, then it makes the head quite rigid, the way that they do it. And you'll feel almost a reverberation when they suck like this. But he was just like, still, like you try and just tap your tongue against your head and rotate it. No, it was really, and then it got softer and quite, so he's just like chilling. And his eyes could maintain too. It wasn't like he was rolling his eyes in his head when I was doing that. Really some neat things happened with him. But I was, like I said, just a hint of concern because, again, the knee and the foot. But he responded instantly. But like I said, the big ones came right here for when he bounced off the butt.
And with the head rotation, do you usually go in both directions?
I try
it's not-
to,
yeah.
but that's also where, when I'm right-handed, so when I'm here, so see, this is my more natural tendency. It's there, but it seems a bit awkward where I would have to adjust. But a 6-week-old baby eating, if he's already getting it that way on one side, I'm okay with it. So I would never look at a newborn assessment to that I have to, quote, balance everything type thing. I tried to, like I did not work him on his head at all. He was doing so much with Diane with vision that she was getting him to rotate. The one thing you didn't see me do was to bring him around to do this and work on him. But I don't, at 6 weeks old, I'm not looking for him to sit up just yet. It's harder, Diane, to reach over than to come here and maintain all of this. However, if he had torticollis, for sure, then I would have gone in here. And again, this is how light I do it, just like with your heads. But
So
anyway,
the movement that you were doing while he was taking the bottle was, if he would have had torticollis, then that would have been something that would have helped him.
yeah.
Last time we were here about rotating the baby as you're bringing it into nurse.
Right.
And I thought that was a very valuable piece of information, so just wanted you to repeat it for me and for everybody else, really for me.
When a baby is in any position, that rotation is, you know what I mean, is there and putting them down. You'll see a lot of people that are more standoffish. So coming underneath here, but spinning them. So when you're going to nurse, you can come down here around this way, but I really like when they're spun around this way. I like when the hand is free. I was kind of doing that with Benjamin yesterday. I wasn't nursing him, but again, when the hand is free, he was doing all these kind of neat things where he was pushing up off his hand like this on my belly kind of thing to look around and do more of his head control. The same with this hand is free. When they're tucked like this, do you see the difference when that arm is tucked? Mm-hmm. But however, if you're trying to get him to sleep, you know, maybe you do want to wrap him up a little bit more. Now, what's nice about that kind of position is that you can still be here on that pubic bone as well and just do this whole kind of rotation through here as you're working on them. If you wanted more a tummy time experience, you still could be nursing, lay back a little bit, and still work that whole pubic bone and tush. And from that position, and then they can work on the head control that way and going on.
So there could be a key if you're holding a baby with a bottle, because people hold it totally different.
Well, there's a couple of keys. So if you're a bottle-fed baby, first of all, the positioning now is usually here. Okay, here meaning that the child's total chest is presenting upright versus the torque. Mm-hmm. So what happens also here now is now I'm no longer sourcing my food. So nursed baby will go to their food. When you go in to eat your spaghetti, you go to your food. A bottle-fed baby now, there's none of that. Unless they know to, this is where my, let's see where his is on my elbow. I can, do you know what I mean? And still work on those skills. Or I can bring the child more here for a bottle fed, keeping with like that bottle that was they just had, a nice smaller bottle. You can get in nice and close here and work, whereas those big 18 ounces or whatever, it's like, oh, okay. But also now what happens is the digestive is straight. right? So that is one of the reasons why I believe bottle-fed babies are more constipated than breastfeed babies, is because you're now digesting, like everyone, remember when we're getting the lesson? Wow, my digestion feels so much better, you know what I mean? But when you're actually starting to torque and move these things, look at here to eliminate kind of thing, versus trying to be like this and go to the bathroom. I mean, how's that work for you, kind of thing. So, those are nice aspects. And now again, an NG2 baby, for some, the bonding is gone. It's much harder for a parent, and it's valid, to be up and snuggle and say, oh, are you enjoying your meal, when it's being administered either through a G-tube or an NG tube, which needs to be valid. So lots of times too, even for NICU and stuff, now this is how the child's even being fed. So there's none of contact why the food's going. So elimination is even that much harder for kids in that kind of position, because there's no healthy stresses. There's no rotation, but that's where I think it would be great just in the NICU. Wow, I mean, what that would do, breathing, you're just going in and going out, all these. And this is, again, where I say this is like touching butter without leaving a fingerprint. It's not, you're not, because your hand weight on an immature system is just enough. Even with, trying to keep her out of the hospital, she's like, why are you working here? Because that's where retraction is. Well, I'm looking, so squeeze the ball, Joanne. See where the air goes when you squeeze it? So I was going in behind here to squeeze the lungs to start to inflate more here. I thought she was way too weak at that point for even the weight of my fingers, where again she's retracting here. I'm going here, right, to open this up. What little she had, why compress it more? Because I'm telling you, even just hand weight. A preemie, really small, just the weight of a diaper is too much for their system as far as what it'll do to the pelvis.
Can you just go back and just tell us what your hands are doing in the front and in the back?
For what?
For what you just went over for the rib cage or the breath, like you were rocking. It looked like this. So I don't know.
It was that. It was literally.
So and what's your intention? Like, I guess, what's your?
Well, one, and I now put a human. What I'm going to do here now, I can't get into the pubic bone, obviously, because she's a grown adult. However, I like the ball for this reason. Now we're going to start getting into what we did with Benjamin, what we did with the babies, as well as what we're going to do for the adults. Now you can go as far as out into the feet, but right now I'm just going to stick to here. Now obviously I can't go in and go, and I have no intention of going into the pubic bone, but I want to start tilting that pelvis and the rib cage. So what I'm doing here is just a light, and again, look, her feet are up. I'm doing the same thing as we were doing yesterday. I'm looking for her to breathe into my hands, right? So I'm going to be underneath the tush. Sorry, this might be the one that we want to come on this side. That's why I didn't put the tables around, so there'd be a bit more room.
Work.
So I'm just, right there. Well, what I'm doing here is just, I'm underneath the trochanter almost, into the hip joint. And the trochanter and the hip joints maybe pinky ring. I'm across the femur. But what I'm doing is, as I'm doing that, I'm slowly going into the lower lung.
Into lower what?
Lung. I get it that I'm not touching the right lung. I'm going underneath here into the lower rib cage. But my intent is up into the lungs. Now this is just the beginning of the movement. We're going all the way up into baby butt by tomorrow, and then going back onto the pelvis. So.
And the right hand is doing what, sorry? It's trying to.
rotate.
So again, this is more of what I sort of, that Tai Chi, that deflection of energy kind of hands, that block, however you want to look at it. You know, that if you're going this full on, is that cross and coming out, but I'm moving it across. So I'm just rotating up. So rotating the hand up here as I'm moving here. So it's... Now, right here is where the breath would need it a bit more. Now for Joanne, I'm going to give her just a bit of a lesson to come back to that, just because it's here and I'm here. But now I'm just going to come scooping and rotating in here. Now, in general, you should not hear ever someone's breath, but some people like to play with that, and that it is what it is. But that's where with the baby too, that I was talking about how in the beginning I was hearing this morning the breath, and then I didn't hear it for a while, and then at the end when I was hearing it, sorry baby, but he's 2, but once I started hearing that breath again, to me, that was system fatigue, and it was, I looked and I was correct. I was probably about maybe 52, 55 minutes into the lesson, but that was enough. I probably would have gone a whole hour if nobody was here, but I mean, 5 more minutes, this room's crowded, we're good. But my intent here now I can do it a bit more, is I'm going to come underneath. You have to get used to come for the tush, just so you see, but I'm going to just rotate in. And my intent now is to start moving the pelvic bone, or the pubic bone, sorry. Now, depending on where you are with the table, by the way, and your positioning, it is fine, again, underneath someone's hand to go here, if you need more room here, type thing, to play with that. Depending, again, someone's arms might be longer, they're shorter, could be the way that their weight, positioning, how they are on the table. It's okay to actually direct people so you can give them a better lesson. Now, normally I would not, like I said, ask her to move over. But because I'm teaching you guys, I really wanted to be specific. So same thing, you can work with your people, but what I would normally do with something like that is just say, oh, I'd really like to work on your chest. I wouldn't even say breathing for that person unless maybe they were cold or sick, because I don't want to add a connotation of that I'm going to work on the breath. And just ask him to move closer before they even lie down on the table. But that was my fault because I was talking.
And now you're working more on the femur a little bit to get the pelvis?
Well, I've been working when I do this kind of a touch, from the shoulders, clavicles, scapulas, your entire spine, chest cavity, all that's get activated. So but notice with this touch though, right now I could, but it's not like in karate where you're breaking the board. So if you just think up to the board, you're only going to go to here. You have to break through the board to crack it, right? So this is a movement where if I'm looking to bend the spine, it's not what our intent is. Right now the intent is to start working with activating the pelvis into that lower breath.
How much pressure is in your left hand?
Oh, none.
None. Okay. No, it just looks that way. Okay. I just wanted to.
Yeah.
It really
I
looks
probably,
that way.
No, yeah, I might have a bit more pressure right in here just because of where I'm going into the lower ribs on the right hand, but, right? Are you surprised that this is that light?
Yeah, it's light. I do feel it, but I tend to feel everything
Right, but I mean, I'm
in
not,
depth.
this was a touch, but even that, I'm still not
It's
being
just,
hard.
you're not pushing you stay with the amount of resistance I have.
Yeah.
That's how I perceive it.
I'm letting her breathe.
So does it seem like, I feel like it only seems like you're going hard because you're going with her breath and she's going out, so you're going with
Yeah.
her. That's why it looks
Yeah.
like that, I'm thinking.
Yeah. But you can play with that. Now, she can either stay with that, we can quickly set up the tables, but honestly, you can actually still say that and go get around it. The only thing is, the bolsters will not give you that same kind of, because eventually what you can do here then, see, is I can come in, and that's what I was talking about with baby butt. But we'll be working on that tomorrow.